Hi and welcome back. Today we're going to be talking about Darksiders 3. Now, originally I was supposed to be a little bit unexcited about this one. I've heard a lot of bad things about Darksiders 3, and I finally decided to give it a try after playing the first two games. And I have to admit, I actually really enjoy Darksiders 3. While it is not a perfect game, to me it is probably the one that I personally enjoyed the most. And that has to do with the way Fury is written, along with the way that the combat works. I really enjoy those two elements, so let's get into it. So what happened? Why do people dislike Darksiders 3? Well, to put it quite simply, it changes the formula of Darksiders again. You see, Darksiders 1 was this linear action game that was popular at the time. Games like Devil May Cry were kind of big, and it clearly carried some inspiration from like the action game genre, God of War and so on. And in Darksiders 2, they changed the formula again from being a linear action game to being this open world game with loot and all of that. That was kind of big at the time. And then when Darksiders 3 came out, they decided to remove the loot. They decided to remove the open world and the skill tree and so on, and turned it into a Soulslike instead. And while I respect a game and like a game franchise that always evolves, I have to admit it is kind of jarring going through all of them, especially this close to each other, because they each have pretty big differences to each other. And Darksiders 3 is probably the most jarring to a lot of series fans. Unfortunately, that is. And I think a lot of it also has to do with Fury, the way she's written, especially at the start. She can come off as being an asshole. Now, she is supposed to be the third horseman of the Apocalypse, or the fourth, I don't remember, and being like angry is kind of her personality type, but it mainly just comes across as her being whiny. And honestly, that was also my first impressions of her. But as I got into the game, I started to really enjoy it. While there were things that I personally dislike, like the fact that a lot of the enemies have shields that they can block with for a seemingly unending amount of time. And like there's a lot of that which very much slows the gameplay down. In general, I enjoyed the combat quite a bit. I feel like the dodging was smooth, the whip was cool, I liked the special attacks, and Fury's ability to change elements and each element having like a special weapon with it was super fucking cool. I also really enjoyed the way that that played into things like puzzle solving, with certain elements being able to solve certain puzzles, fires being able to burn cobweb, and things like lightning allowing you to fly so you can cross different distances. And things like the power, the purple one that you will see me playing with a lot, allowed you when you were swimming to walk under the water, which then allowed you to solve puzzles that have entire underwater sections. Now, I would be lying if I was sitting here pretending like Darksiders 3 was perfect. It has a fair bit of issues. To begin with, this untextured box, why is it here? It makes no sense. What happened? Is this normal? Is it a me problem? I'm not quite sure. But for some reason, this untextured box appears in multiple places, and enemies have shields, like a lot of shields, like a crazy amount of shields. It is thrown around more often than any other game I've seen, and they react to you fairly quickly. So it's hard to get around the shield and get a hit off. There's also no backstab, so you can't really do that entire sliding around the enemy to do a backstab thing like you can in other Souls-likes. It's a bit of a miss there. On top of that, and I have to admit this, and like it might be a skill issue, all of this might be skill issues that I'm going to be complaining about. I dislike the fact that with the special weapons, they feel borderline useless as they require different upgrade paths as the main weapon. That would normally not be something that I'm complaining about, but the reality here is that I never ever felt the need to use my special weapon other than for when I was solving puzzles. As an example, you have this giant hammer when you're using the third element that you unlock, and it's really fucking cool, and you can chain it into combos if you really want to. But oftentimes I found trying to do so just got me hit, which then made me take damage. And on top of that, my normal weapon was doing more damage anyway. Why would I ever equip it? And that really plays into the fact that builds are gone. There's no more unique item stats and loot and all of that. That is gone, it's the way of the past. And that is really unfortunate, because I think things like sacrifice weapons from Darksiders 2 would have done wonders here. Like that entire loot system, if that was in this game, it would have done the game wonders. Different weapons, more options, all of that. It would have been a lot better, in my own humble opinion. I also have to admit I dislike the way that you distribute your stat points. Normally in the Soulslike you have dexterity, strength, for all of those stats. Here you have 3 stats, you have to fill up a bar of Vulgrim with souls. Once you do that you get 1 point and you then go in and spend on your stats. Initially it seems like a more user-friendly way to approach that, but what I found was that it just ends up with me having a really overpowered normal weapon and my wrath attacks not being touched. And it's just a bit of a shame, in my opinion, overall. I also feel like the armors and stuff in the game are just kind of boring. Maybe that's a me thing. But the fact of the matter is, each armor just increases the damage that you deal with their respective elements. So things like the fire armor increases fire damage, and then they have like the physical reduction and so on. But every armor has the physical reduction and other stats. The only thing that's unique to them is that elemental thing. And that's a bit of a shame as well, in my own opinion. That being said, another thing that people kind of disliked with Darksiders 3, as far as I could pick up on, was its writing. The way Fury is written, especially if you don't finish the game, is annoying, bratty, and honestly not very furious or horseman-like. It's just kinda whiny for the most part. And while there are elements of Fury that I really like, I think she's super cool. I think most of the annoyance that you might have with her character could be fixed at the end of the game with the way that the game ends, at least in my playthrough, as Fury does seem to grow, albeit it almost takes the entire fucking game to get there. I think another big thing is also the fact that the games don't feel like they really fit into each other that well, and that might just be a me thing, maybe I'm completely wrong here. But outside of it being the horseman, I feel like the games very rarely tackle the bigger threats in the universe of the game. And when I'm saying that, what I mean is that things like, why did the shield get broken? What is happening with the balance? What is the bigger threat? All of these things that are being teased have been teased since 2008. And Darksiders 3 came out in 2016. Like, it's been a while, and there's still no answers, and this game doesn't answer it either. So I understand why there probably also would be some frustration with that. However, if we're gonna be a little bit positive here, now that we've gotten the negative out of the way in the first place, while all of what I said is true, the enemy variety is good, I enjoy the different enemies, and they're mostly all fun to fight. The M&K controls are insanely good for Soulslike, and I adore the level design here. They are mostly all done incredibly well, while the level wraps around on itself for different puzzles and so on. I really like that sort of stuff. I also really like the way the game looks. It's the first one of the games where I've really felt like every level hit pretty well. And the game's length is also a fair bit on the shorter side, which in my opinion is a good thing. It allows the game not to overstay its welcome, which I think is kind of nice. I also don't think the game is too difficult. I think it's fairly easy to pick up nowadays. And I really like the puzzles here. Like I said, the different elemental swaps, in my opinion, does a lot for the game. And I really like how it both plays into combat, with the fact that you have different attacks with the different elements and special attacks, but also how it plays into puzzles. You see, sometimes you'll have to combine them together, where you might have to freeze a brick in place that you then use force to push. Like, there is like all of these different things that will all the time be playing together, especially as you unlock different things. And while it's not always like that, and sometimes it gets underutilized, I genuinely think it is super cool to see it being played through like that. I genuinely wish they would have taken it a step further and allowed you to chain different jumps together. You see, each of the different elements also have a different third or like special jump. You have the force one, which allows you to turn into a giant ball that can magnetize to certain surfaces. You have fire, which just extends your jump, or lightning, which allows you to fly, and so on. If you could change those together, that would also have been really fucking cool. I really like that. I also really like how Fury seemingly actually grows across the story. For me, that's a thing that I at least personally enjoyed. Now, I haven't read the books, maybe there's something different in that that made me hate it, I don't know. But I know from like the game's perspective, I actually really enjoyed her character progression within Darksiders 3, going from being this just angry, bitter person, or demon I should say, to then being the protector of humanity by the end. I think it's really fucking cool, and it sets up the third game kinda in a good light in my own opinion. That being said, I have not played the DLCs as they both don't look that interesting. One is like a new area expansion, which could be kind of fun, and the other one is just an arena mode like the Crucible from the second game that is now being sold separately, which, let's just be honest, it's just kind of shitty, you know? Like, come on. But like, overall, I really do enjoy the game. I think the combat was fun. I think the abilities were interesting. I think exploring the world was fun. And Volgrim is always a delight, and more so here than in any other game. I also think the way Fury and some of the finalities and the finishers are genuinely super fucking cool. Like, your first fight against Wrath, this is very early on in the game. He stabs you and you break like the tip of the sword up and do a like backflip to stab him with the sword that is still inside of you to like rip it off. That is fucking cool. Come on now. That is cool as shit. And it's all done out of the anger of seeing your dead horse. I love that sort of stuff. That is like unrealistic, fun badassery. It's cool. It's really fucking cool. I also like how the whip and all of that plays into it, because again, you rarely get to play with a whip in a game. And honestly, the way that it plays in Darksiders 3, it can be kind of hard to predict the length of the whip sometimes, like kind of understanding it, getting a feel for it, but it is really fun when it clicks. And I don't know if this is like going for a bit of a reach, but I also like the fact that it feels like in the game as you're progressing through the different deadly sins, which your mission is to, well, capture them all. The 7 deadly sins, it seems that you're going through Fury's own emotional state as you go. So as you go, she might go through the envy and then the pride at the end. That then like makes her experience that fall of pride, and then eventually she becomes this more full person. I really enjoy the way it's written. Maybe that is going for reach though, I don't mind admitting that, but I enjoy that quite a lot. I also think that, like I said, the level design is just really cool, and the game is genuinely pretty. Like, really pretty, and at times jaw-droppingly so, especially at the beginning of the game. I love Haven, and I love the giant tree and the makers. Anyway, if one thing is for sure, it is that with me completing Darksiders 1 through 3, I only have one game left, and that is Genesis. And I do intend to play that because we play as Strife in it. And I am genuinely more excited for Darksiders 4 than I was before playing Darksiders 3. I wholeheartedly recommend the entire series even in modern day, but if you don't want to play any of the other games, in my opinion, for me personally, like I said, Darksiders 3 in its current state, not in its launch state, it has gotten plenty of updates since then, I believe, I actually do recommend. I came out completely surprised with a complete opposite take of what I kind of expected to, have. And I like that. I like having my mind sort of changed in that way. That was pretty cool. But all that being said, I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you all in the next one. Have a good one. Bye.